In this tutorial, I'll show you how to create a Minecraft-style portrait using Adobe Illustrator. That's coming up next. Thanks for joining me today. I'm Aaron Rutten, and it is my mission to help artists like you enjoy digital art and learn some new skills along the way. That's why today I'm going to be showing you how to create a portrait in the style of Minecraft. So let's go ahead and get started. I've gone ahead and created a new artboard here in Illustrator. I'm going to zoom out just a bit, and I'm going to select the Perspective Grid tool. Now when I enable that, I'll get these vanishing points on the left and the right. I can move them out just to expand the cube, and you could imagine that this cube is going to be the shape of the head. So you can adjust this if you want to make it taller, you can make it wider, you can even make sure that these two sides line up perfectly right on that axis there. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to line up the vertical guides from both of these planes. And these planes are divided by these little squares. You want to make sure that the squares are completely even on both sides as well. Next, I'm going to select the rectangle shape tool. I'm going to set it to no stroke, and I'm going to set the fill to just a nice bright color that we can see, like this red-orange. I'm going to make sure to set my color to HSB as well. Now, if I click within that perspective on the left and I draw, my rectangle is going to stay in perspective. So that'll be the front of the face. Let's go ahead and create another rectangle using a different color like this blue. And if we want to draw that on the other plane, what we have to do is click up here in this little icon in the top left to switch to the other plane. You're locked into whichever plane is selected. And with that blue rectangle selected, I'll just change the fill to a more appropriate skin color that matches my skin tone. Now I'm going to select the black arrow tool and I'm going to click on that left orange plane. Then I'll choose the color sampler and I'll click on that flesh tone color to sample it. And I want to just click on the fill and make that just a bit brighter. Next, I'll go to the view menu and then to perspective grid, hide grid. We can see it without the grid lines there to get a feel for how it's coming along. And you can toggle with Control-Shift-I to show and hide it. So now we have this nice 3D cube that can be our face. We want to count how many squares across it is because that'll help us figure out where the center is. I'll go ahead and draw a rectangle here down the center with a different color, and that'll be the center line, or the line of symmetry. We'll do that in the center as well. If you look in the layers palette, you can see I kept those guides on a separate layer. The face is also on a separate layer. I'll create a separate layer for the eyes next. I'm going to choose a white color, and I'll choose the rectangle tool, and I'll just draw in my eyes wherever I think I want them. Now I can feel free to adjust this and make them bigger or smaller. I might have to try some different things to figure out what I like. You can count how many squares across from the center you are, and that'll help you line up your eye perfectly. That's why we wanted to make sure that all these squares were even when we set our guides. I'm going to go ahead and use black now to draw in my pupil. Maybe it'll be my iris, we'll see. Just make sure they're even. There is many squares across and tall on both sides. Next, I'm going to create a new layer for mouth. And I'll go ahead and just draw in my mouth here. That can just be a horizontal rectangle like this. I'm going to create a new layer, and I'll call this nose. I can create just a little bit of a rectangle here for my nose. I can change the color of that now. I'm going to go ahead and just sample my skin color over here on the shadow side. I'll make that just a little bit darker. So it's basically the same color, just a bit darker, so it looks like the skin is in shadow. Now I'm going to go to that guides layer and just hide it since we don't need the guides anymore. And I'll go ahead and just hide my grid. And we can take a look at what we have so far. I think it's coming along pretty well. I'm going to create a new layer now for hair. And we can go ahead and make that quite a bit darker. I'll draw on a rectangle here just to get the top of the hairline. My hair is kind of slicked back, so I don't know if that translates very well to a cube like this, but I'm going to do my best. I'm going to have a little bit of my sideburn over here on the side. And I'll go ahead and just fill in the back of my hair here, leaving some space for my ear as well. Now, it's a little bit difficult because we have to work with these big giant square tiles here, but it does give you a particular kind of look, and the square tiles make it easier to achieve that look. You just can't do a very detailed image unless you do a lot of squares. For something like this, simple is probably better, so try not to overdo it too much. I'm going to go ahead and create a new layer, and I'm going to call this ear, and this will be some shadow for the inner part of the ear. Let's go ahead and draw that in. I want to change the fill to a different color. I'll just sample my color from the nose, and I'll use that. I might tweak that just a little bit. Maybe make it just a little bit darker since it's on the shadow side of the head. Now I'm going to select the mouth. I don't want it to be black, so I'll make it kind of a brownish color like this. I think that looks pretty good. Now that's basically most of what I want to do. I want to go ahead and clean this up a little bit, so I'll zoom in pretty close here to the ear, and I can see that I didn't get that perfectly lined up, so I'll have to use the white arrow tool to nudge some things around a bit. But just look at your image pretty closely and look for mistakes that you can fix. There's another one here on the hairline. I'll just get that to line up better. And I think that's looking pretty good. And one thing I do notice is that front side of the hair needs to be just a bit lighter, so I'm just going to shift the value just a bit brighter there. I'm also going to select my pupils and maybe make them irises instead and give them some color. Make them kind of a greenish hazel color like this. I'm going to toggle my grid back to visible again, and I'm going to go ahead and put in some little highlights on the eyes. I'll just take a little chunk out with white here. I'm going to draw a rectangle on the lower half of the iris here, and I'm going to change that to a lighter green that's just a bit lighter than the first one I chose. That'll add a little bit of reflectivity to the eyes there. I'm going to go ahead and hide my grid. I see over here on the back of the head, there's some edges that don't line up, so I'll just fix those. I'm just using the arrow keys to nudge things around a bit. I can also see here on the eye, there's a little line that I need to cover. I'm going to go ahead and save my document by going to File, Save. I'm going to delete that guides layer because we don't need that anymore. I'm going to go back to the hair layers, and I'm going to merge together any individual layers using the Pathfinder and Merge. To try to get them to be all one solid shape, you may have to make them overlap each other just a little bit to accomplish that. Now this is kind of optional, but if you want to control the depth of your head, you can draw a rectangle, and we can imagine this rectangle will be where we'll trim off some of the head, so we'll make it white. Then we'll use that along with the Pathfinder to subtract from the hair layer and from the skin layer, and that'll essentially crop off those areas. So now we have a head that's not perfectly square. Now I happen to notice here on the other eye where there's the reflection, there's still a little bit of a line. I'm going to go ahead and fix that. Now, if you're tempted to take your face and move it around on the artboard to center it, you can do that, but keep in mind that it's going to make your guides not match up with your artwork anymore. So you should be 100% sure you're not going to want to do any more drawing before you move your artwork on your artboard. I'm going to go back to the guides here. I'm going to maybe add in a little bit more detail on the side of my hair here, just to have that kind of taper down toward my ear. And I think overall I'm pretty happy with how that looks, so I'm going to go ahead and just crop off that extra space in my artboard here. And let's take a look at one last thing we can do to tweak this, and we'll go ahead and save our final copy. We'll want to make sure that none of our layers are locked. I'm going to go ahead and hit Control-A to select all. That'll select everything here. Then we can select the black arrow tool and just kind of squish it down a bit like this if we want to thin out the head and make it a bit taller. We'll zoom out just a bit and see what we have. When I look at it from far away, I can see that the highlights are actually on the wrong side. This should be the highlight side over here on the left, so I messed that up. But also, I don't think I necessarily like the way that looks small, so I'm going to go ahead and just select those highlights on the eyes. I'm just going to delete them, and I think that works a lot better. So I'm going to go ahead and call this finished. Let's save a final copy by going to File, and we'll choose Save. Then if we want to print this or put it on the web, we need to go to File, Export, and then we can choose Export As or Export for Screens. I'm going to choose Export for Screens. We can choose where to save it. We can choose a format. I'm going to choose PNG, and we can choose a scale. I'm going to go ahead and choose width 1024 pixels, but you could choose whatever size you like. And then once we click on Export Artboard, we'll have a PNG file that we can print or share on the web. And I think with that, we have a finished Minecraft-style portrait. If you enjoyed this tutorial, take a quick second to click the like button, and if you're new to my channel, I'd love to have you subscribe. I have a lot more digital art tutorials like this. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.